Hi there, you're watching Gardens and Graveyards. My name is Charisma and today we are in the garden and we're going to harvest some herbs. It's pretty early in the morning and but not super early. It's around 8 o'clock and I wanted to wait for the dew to dry off, but I don't want to wait for the sun to come out too high because it's important to harvest your herbs before the sun is high in the sky. What happens when the sun is up, the volatile oils of the herbs get drawn out and dissipate into the air and perfume the air and attract the pollinators and all that kind of stuff. But I want as much of those oils in the leaves and flowers as possible. So I harvest them early in the morning, but after the dew dries. And it's important to do that just because the dew will make it harder for those herbs to dry. I typically air dry my herbs. I don't always use a dehydrator. I rarely use a dehydrator unless it's late in the fall when I know that there's a lot of moisture content in the air and it's just going to be a lot faster and less loss to like mildew and fungus, that kind of thing. In the fall, but in the summertime I have zero reason to not just dry them. If they're an herb that I'm going to eat, I dry them in my dining room to just reduce the amount of like dust and insects and that type of thing as they're drying. And but if it's a flower that I'm drying for future flower arrangements, then I typically bundle them up and dry them on my front porch, just so long as they're out of the sun. That's like kind of one of the key points of drying your herbs. So yeah, let's just get out in the garden and start collecting. So the first thing I'm going to harvest today are these calendulas. So all these orange and yellow flowers. Basically all that I do is come in and I snip right underneath the head like this. And then because aesthetically I don't want to just leave this stem like this, I go down. You see this one's gonna bloom soon. If you could see, you could see this one's gonna bloom soon. So I want to leave that there, but I'll just come down here into the crotch of the branch right there, snip that off, and it's just more aesthetically pleasing. And I'm gonna, and you know, this is just what it looks like. Then I'll pull all the petals off of it, but not until I'm in the house. So I'll just leave them in here. They stay nice and intact. And I'm just gonna do that with all of these petals. And because I'm filming by myself and there's not a good place for the camera, you'll have to just trust that I do it exactly like that over and over. And then we'll move on to the next one. The next flower that I'm going to harvest today is Nasturtium. I will be making a vinaigrette of Nasturtium and garlic chives and onion chives. So we'll collect those in just a few minutes. But first I'm up here with the Nasturtiums. I'm just going to collect, you know, probably one of these containers full. And that's it for today. And then this weekend I'll probably make some chips out of the nasturtium leaves. Plenty of nasturtiums growing everywhere to harvest, and they're pretty much ready. So a nasturtium has like a little bit of a peppery flavor, as well as the calendula has a bit of a peppery flavor as well. So they complement each other nicely. Yeah, and they make beautiful salads too. So what I'm looking for in the nasturtiums is I want to find the freshest flowers, and these are the buttercream. So I know like this color is a pretty fresh. This is more fresh, and then this one has lost its color. So that one I wouldn't pick. This one I actually wouldn't pick because there's a bug way down in there. And that's the other thing that I'm looking for. I have quite a bit of ants on this nasturtium. So Not sure. I didn't know they attracted ants, but I'm seeing a lot of them on here. So I'm looking for that. You know, I just shake them off if I can, or if there's like damage and it looks a little funny. There's so many to choose from. I'm not going to pick those ones. So I have a little pile in there and we're good to go. We're going to move on to another section of the garden. The next thing we're going to harvest is strawberries. So I've got a lot of ripe strawberries in this patch, and we're just going to get in there and pick them. The easiest way to collect these strawberries is to snip them right here. You could pull them off, but the chances of pulling this piece off is pretty high. So if I don't want to eat them right away, I try to leave that on there. Otherwise, they tend to go bad pretty quickly. And then, of course, I want to leave these ones that aren't ripe yet, so I'm not going to cut it all the way back into the plant. You may notice that I have these trays that typically have like nursery pots in them, flipped upside down underneath my strawberry patch. And that is just simply to keep the strawberries off of the ground so they're nice and clean to harvest from. Well, that's a pretty nice harvest of strawberries there. I did have a handful that I kept to the side for you. If you don't get out and harvest quickly enough, you're going to end up with rotten strawberries. So these will just go in the compost pile. It's not that big of a deal. Okay, so the last thing that I need to harvest in the backyard is this bee balm. It is early in the morning, which means the hummingbirds are all over it. So let's hope they don't get too angry with me and attack me. But it is time to, one, I need to cut some of the stems down so that it has a chance to rebloom, because we have another like 6 weeks or so that the bee balm will be in production before the rains really come. And then I'm gonna harvest some leaves for tea. I don't know if there's gonna be any petals that I'll be able to harvest today, because it's been a while since I've done any harvesting on it, and when the hummingbirds and the bees go in to get the nectar, they kind of blow out those petals, and they don't always look that great, and they're used. The nectar's been used, so they're not always the most ideal flower for harvesting for consumption. But I'm gonna get into it and see what I can harvest. So you can see that these petals are pretty well used, but I can still harvest these leaves for myself. So that's what I'll be doing, is saving these leaves. I can hear some chirping at me. So you can see some of them are highly ready to be removed. That's pretty icky. But this one has really nice fresh blooms. So I'll actually just snip the head off right there and save that flower for myself. I do my best to harvest young leaves, and I don't really want any that have holes in them. There's nothing really wrong with the big leaves, but they're a lot more potent and strong in flavor. And I guess it just depends on your taste. I kind of mix it up a little bit. The leaves of bee balm made into a tea, dry them and make them into a tea. They're very similar to an Earl Grey flavor, so very like earthy and robust. One last thing I'll show you is this is how bee balm will grow. So this one came up and bloomed, and as it faded, it put up another bloom stalk. Really kind of fun. And they also branch like this and create more blooms. So if this was still attached, I could cut it right here, and then 2 more shoots would come up and have more blossoms. So that's kind of what I'm doing over there, is just bringing the canopy of the plant down and allowing it airflow, removing all the icky stuff, and then giving it an opportunity to rebloom. Okay, so this is what I cut down. This is what I got. A handful of leaves, just like 4 flowers, 4 or 5 flowers. And of course, I've got the nasturtiums, the calendula, and I had 1 little tomato ready for harvest. I'll show you what and of course, we don't want to forget a whole basket of strawberries. That's a pretty nice harvest for the morning. We'll come back over here to the bee balm. So this is the butterfly garden, and the reason the bee balm is here is for the bees and the hummingbirds. And man, the hummingbirds absolutely love this flower so much, and they really enjoy the crocosmia right there as well. So it's a really nice combination to have. The bees love this oregano more than they love the bee balm. Now, the bee balm is native to America. Washington and Oregon has a native bee balm, and the East Coast is prolific with bee balm. And then, of course, we've naturalized it everywhere. This is also called Monardia. This is the Jacob's Klein. I'll put the name up on the screen. It's a little bit of a different variety. It's a little bit more ornamental, but it still has the same medicinal values. You could see that I only took down like the really bad yucky ones, but I left plenty on there for the hummingbirds to feed and enjoy themselves. I will harvest more leaves when it's time to actually take these guys down. I'm not too worried about it. I know that I'll have a new flush in another week or so. So basically all I did is cut down to a stem like this and leave branches like this. And then these guys will grow new plants, new blossoms, just like this one has. Let's see if I have one that I've cut before. Oh, here. So earlier in the year, I cut this one, and then you could see it has these 2 branches going. So yeah, and the other thing that I'm looking for when I'm in here is a lot of times they'll come way out here and kind of just be in the way. So I cut those down as well, no matter what they look like. But this just gives it a little bit more of a cleanup and an opportunity for new blooms to come on. And that's all I have time for this morning before I go to my day job. If I have time in the evening, I may do a couple of other harvesting, but we can finish this tomorrow morning in the front yard, because there are some flowers and herbs that need to be harvested up there as well. Hey there, good morning. I did not get back out into the garden last night. It was really windy for one, and just life. So I'm back out. It's the next morning, and I'm gonna try to get the medicine garden and a couple of things in the upper portion of the front yard harvested. It's super hard this time of year when there's a lot to be deadheaded. I need to do divisions and cuttings, and there's a bunch of flowers that I want to dry for wreaths and dried flower arrangements, but I've got to break up my time in increments that make sense. So priority wise, I want to harvest the herbs that are available, because, you know, if I let them go to seed, then I could use the seed to replant, but that's not the whole purpose of planting herbs, is to eat them or, you know, preserve them in some way to make teas or medicine or salves or cook with or whatever. So I'm gonna try to focus on that today, and if I have time, I'll probably do a few flowers that I want to dry for floral arrangement type things. But the rest of it, I have to just kind of put blinders on and breeze through, because you know, I have a regular job. My husband is still recovering from knee surgery. He's 1 week out of surgery. So, you know, that takes a time. It's just me by myself working the garden right now. And there's, you know, I have to keep things alive, and that's more important than, you know, the details right now. So, yeah, anyway, I'm just going to get into it. Right behind me, you see some Artemisia or wormwood, and it is a very prolific plant. I won't be cutting all of it back, but I'll be cutting back what I want to preserve. And then I'm going to leave a lot of tops on there, because I am going to be doing a whole cutting project. I promised my local county master gardeners that I would provide a bunch of cuttings of herbs for their sale next year. So that's going to be a project that we're going to be working on over the next couple of weeks, preparing an area to keep them and doing divisions and cuttings, because it's just that time of year to do it. So anyway, I'm going to cut back my wormwood. I have some Egyptian walking onions to harvest. There's a blue jay behind me, scared me. Okay. And then I have some comfrey. This will be the third cut on the comfrey, but I'm just cutting it back. I'm just making space available for a cardinal flower on one side and a licorice plant on the other side. They're getting shaded. So I just want to cut that back. That's going to get divided in a couple of weeks. And then I've got some chives that I need to cut back. And I've got a bunch of nasturtiums growing over a yarrow. It's choking it out, so I gotta pull those nasturtiums out. And then I'm gonna harvest some fennel down here. So lots to do, and I'm just gonna get at it. If there's more details, I will share as we go along. Anyway, let's do this. As you can see, this fennel is getting way out of control, out of its space. So I'm actually going to cut this whole branch off and this whole branch off, and just let this one keep going until we can get some actual seeds off of it. Those heads are going to seed, but we want to wait until they're brown to get the seeds. So, no. This is variegated lemon thyme, and it is in full bloom, which looks beautiful, but again, I just don't want it to go to seed. So I'm going to buzz all this back and let the plant keep producing instead. Okay, so with a plant like this, all I'm going to do is gather it up in a handful like this and cut right about here. So just go through and cut all through here, just like this, without any like real rhyme or reason. And I could just snip, snip, snip like this too. That's fine. It's just easier to clean up if I grab a handful of it. And there we have it. Well, unfortunately, I ran into a problem. Cutting back my comfrey, I discovered that it has mealy bug. So, this late in the game with the comfrey, I will probably just cut the whole thing down. Yeah, it's bad, and it's starting to affect the plant around it. Though I think this might be another issue that it's having. Like, what causes that? It's like the stripping away of leaves. It's kind of odd. I don't know if the birds are doing it, because that looks like bird poop. Well, life is a gardener, right? Okay, so that was a little detour for sure. After I got into the comfrey, it's right there, this taller plant here with the long leaves. It was about only on like the third portion of it right here had mealybug. So I cut about twice as much into the plant, and then I'm going to treat the rest of the plant and the soil around it and the plants around it with neem oil, Captain Jack's neem oil. And then I'll come back, because this is already ready-made. It's not concentrate, it's just ready-made. And in probably a few days, I'll just come back and check on it and see what's going on. And I will make up a rubbing alcohol water solution. That is actually the best solution that I have found for mealybugs, but I just don't have time today. I had only allotted so much time to do this project this morning before I go to work. And I'm just gonna use what I have on hand really quickly so I can finish up the last little pieces that I have left to do. And then, you know, I always like make sure that like my sweatshirt comes off before I go back inside. And let's see, I use these pruners, so I have my alcohol wipes out here. Wipe down my pruners, all the comfrey. It all went into a black garbage bag, and it's going to the landfill. Because I just do not want the risk of introducing that mealybug into my garden through the compost. Because we don't have a really hot compost, so they would just live in that compost and be happy as clams. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to throw them away, unfortunately. But I'm hoping that, I mean, I know my comfrey will just come back, and so I'm not worried about that, but I'm hoping that maybe I could save these last few leaves. I like to have comfrey in the garden, especially in the summertime when we're using sharp tools, because on more than one occasion I've cut myself and grabbed a comfrey leaf, wrapped it around my finger or my arm, depending on what I cut. And it helps with like blackberry scratches too. Grab a comfrey leaf, slap it on there. stops the bleeding until you can get to a first aid kit. It literally saved me from stitches when I was cutting some lavender over here a couple years ago. I had a brand new pair of pruners, and it was the very first cut that I had with the pruners. I was holding the stem and I was holding my finger weird, and I cut deep into my finger, and I know that the comfrey saved me from stitches. So just from grabbing it right there and getting into the house, cleaning it off, wrapping it up. Anyway, so that's what I'm doing. I'm just going to clean up my tools, get the neem oil up on that comfrey, and then we'll move into the other side of the garden. And if you can see, this white flower right there is actually the yarrow that I want to grow, but it's got verbena in it, and it's got tons of nasturtium, so out. And then I have a little purple flower right there. Those are oregano flowers, and you don't want your oregano to flower because that signals to the plant that it's done doing its thing and it doesn't need to produce a plant anymore. It can focus on producing seed. I don't want it to go to seed. I want the plant to just keep growing. So cut off those flowers. The chives are insane. That's that grassy mess right there. And I've got a grassy mess right there. Two different kinds of chives. That one is garlic and this one is onion chives. And we're just gonna cut those back as well. All right, so here's what I got harvested. We've got garlic chives, onion chives. These are all gonna just obviously clean up the dead pieces in there or whatever, but then they're gonna all just go in a big jar of oil together, so not worried about that. I've got some rose petals here, and we've got yarrow and fennel and verbena. I'm gonna hang those to just dry as for flowers because there's still plenty out there that I could harvest for medicinal or herbal kitchen use. And then I have a whole brown bag full of Artemisia. And you can see that the chives look so much better. I pulled out a bunch of nasturtium, let the yarrow breathe a little bit. I discovered that I have what looks like a pumpkin trying to grow underneath all that. I did not get up to the oregano. I'm just gonna have to do that on a different day. I see there's like a whole bunch of all of that green from here to there is all bird seed. So I need to pull all that out and trim back the dwarf oregano. I need to cut back all this rose campium so it doesn't reseed over here any more than it has. Over on this side, obviously the licorice plant has a lot more sunlight because I cut back all that comfrey, as well as the cardinal flower right there. I didn't get to the walking Egyptian onions. Those are just gonna have to wait. They look absolutely awful, but I want to put them somewhere else, and that comfrey took me longer than I was expecting. Anyway, I did cut back the variegated lemon thyme and the artemisia. Everything just looks a little bit cleaner, and I could see what's going on. Could actually see the culinary sage, which is fabulous. You see that I left a lot of brand new top growth on the artemisia, and that is really the best place to take cuttings of Artemisia. So I'll be doing that soon. And then the lovage, I was so distracted by, oh, that's the other thing I had, is all this lovage seeds here. I was so distracted by all these big stalks of seed, I didn't even notice that the plant itself was actually doing absolutely fantastic. Beautiful. And then I had this giant burdock in here that needed to come out, and so I took that out, and I've got some pretty good roots that I can use, so that's nice. And then just pan over here and show you the bronze fennel. I didn't take out this main column, but I did take off that big long shoot this way, and I'm just gonna hang them to dry and let them dry. I have one more thing that I want to cut back before I get cleaned up and go to work. So let's get that done quickly. I've got to bring all this stuff upstairs. It's trying to rain, so I want to at least get it up underneath the covered porch. All right, so you can see this garbage bag. I put it out here on the walkway away from any plants. It's just rock and wood, and I just wanted to show you how it filled up almost an entire bag. And just a little closer look again at these little mealy bugs, in case you don't know what they look like. They're like little fuzzy things, and they can take over, and they're disgusting. So I mentioned earlier that I'll take my sweatshirt off before I go into the house, and that's because I do not want to introduce this to my houseplants. Houseplants are their most ideal environment. They love that indoor houseplant environment, so I definitely don't want to introduce them to that. All right, so this is the last piece that I want to take care of this morning, and it's this Pearly Everlasting, this white flowering plant here. It is looking like this. It will start going, so it kind of starts like this, and then it opens up a little bit, and then it goes like this, and then it'll turn to seed. And I don't need it to go to seed. I like to use the blossoms in tea, and I like to dry them as well. And I have enough this year that I can kind of do both. So I'm just going to cut these back and yeah, call it a good morning. Okay, there we go. So I did leave some foliage down on the bottom, partially to photosynthesize for next year, partially so I remember exactly how big the patch is. My plan in a few weeks is I'm actually going to dig that up and divide it a little bit. I don't love it right in this location, so we're going to move it. And I did end up leaving just 3 stalks of flowers. If I get some seeds from there, I can save them in case the divisions don't work out as well as I hope they will. Okay, so that concludes this video about cutting back herbs and flowers to dry or use as tea, and a little bonus info on mealy bugs, which I was not expecting. Not excited about that, but I'm glad I found it, and I hope I could get it under control before it spreads any further. I didn't see it on any of the geranium or the rose that was around it, so here's hoping. Anyway, so thank you so much for wandering around the garden with me over the last couple of mornings while I gathered plants. And I hope it inspired you to get out there, harvest your herbs before, they go to seed and you can't use them. I have some birds going absolutely wild behind me, or in front of me, actually. Behind you, in front of me. I don't know if you could hear all that, but it's quite the thing. It's kind of fun. Anyway, so thank you for watching, and I hope you have a great day. Until the next time, keep celebrating life. I thought maybe I should show you what I did with all of them. So this is the fennel seed spread out here to finish drying, and a burdock root can sit out here and dry. And these seeds I'll save to create more plants. The seeds that I'm saving for cooking, I have those inside drying, just because, you know, there's dust and there's pollen and there's birds and there's bugs and all the things. So if I can, you know, keep those clean as much as possible once they've been picked, I try to do that. So next thing I did is I put most of this Pearly Everlasting in this vase with about 1.5 inches of water on the bottom. Now, hydrangeas respond really well to this treatment to dry, and I've found other umbels do as well, but these aren't quite an umbel, so we'll see if that is a beneficial way of getting these guys to dry nicely. In case you're not sure what an umbel is, this is the fennel, and this disc kind of flower is an umbel, if you just think umbrella. So that's what I did with the fennel. I hung it up. I have a string up here underneath my porch, and so I put Pearly Everlasting, yarrow, and fennel up there to dry. And I just absolutely love this look. It's so stinking cute. So yeah, that's the harvest for today. And anything else that I harvested, most of the things that I harvested from yesterday are actually just drying on my kitchen table, because those are food items. The things that I have drying out here are going to be garden items. Okay, now that really is the end of this video. But thanks again, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye.